My breath catches as I stare at the cold, unforgiving steel of the prison bars, feeling the weight of betrayal crush my chest. Every second I replay the moment I handed her over. Elena, my ex, the woman I trusted more than anyone. I remember the trembling in my hands, the trembling that wasn't from fear but from the dread of what I was about to do. I thought I was saving myself, but deep down I knew I was handing her the keys to my destruction. The smell of stale concrete, the distant clang of metal doors closing behind me, they all fade into a deafening silence in my mind. She was supposed to be locked away, out of my life forever. But the truth hit me like a punch to the gut. Elena had paid a hitman, an organized, ruthless killer, to end me inside these walls. I saw her deceit etched in her eyes, a cold, calculating gaze that haunted me now. Her betrayal pierced me deeper than any prison sentence ever could. I had thought I was doing the right thing, turning her in for trafficking organs, believing it was justice. But it wasn't justice. It was a trap, a carefully laid trap, and I walked right into it, clutching the broken pieces of my own conscience. I clenched my fists until my knuckles turned white as I recalled her last words. The venom in her voice when she threatened me, after I uncovered her secret dealings. "You think you're the hero? You're just a pawn," she spat, eyes blazing with fury. "You'll regret this, I swear. When I get out, there's no escaping what I'll do." The thought of her evil smile, so familiar yet so twisted, makes my stomach churn. She always had a way of convincing herself she was the victim, even as she played the dirtiest games. And now I sit here in solitary confinement, the echo of her treachery echoing in my ears. The thought that she paid to have me silenced, to end my life in this prison, makes my blood run cold. I reach into my pocket, feeling the rough edges of a crumpled note she left behind, her handwriting jagged, almost frantic. "You're mine, even in death," it read. Her words are like daggers stabbing me again and again, reminding me that betrayal isn't just a word, it's her signature. I replay the moment I learned about her betrayal, the call from an anonymous voice that shattered my last illusions. "Your ex is dead or dying. Be thankful if she's breathing," the voice hissed before hanging up. That was the moment I realized Elena was capable of anything. She'd bought a killer, and I'd been stupid enough to believe I was doing the right thing by turning her in. My mind races with questions. Who else was involved? How deep did her web of lies go? Did she ever really love me? Or was I just another pawn in her twisted game? Every time the guard passes by, I catch a glimpse of his face, and my mind flashes to her. Her cold smile, her lies, her deadly plans. I know she's out there plotting her next move, maybe even celebrating over a glass of wine, thinking she's won. But I can't let her. I have to stay alive, no matter how much I want to give up, no matter how much her betrayal burns inside me. I swear I will find a way out of this hell, one way or another, because if I don't, Elena's darkness will swallow me whole, and her treachery will become my deathbed. I clutch the crumpled photo in my trembling hands, the edges worn from countless nights spent staring into its faded surface. Her face stares back at me, beautiful yet cold, a paradox that leaves my stomach twisting. How did Elena, the woman I once loved with every fiber of my being, become this? An assassin's accomplice? A murderer? The thought claws at my mind, relentless and piercing. I trace her features with my fingertips, feeling the warmth I once knew, now replaced by an icy chill that seeps through my bones. The shadows of this prison feel heavier tonight. The silence is deafening, broken only by the faint echo of my own ragged breathing. I recall the day I handed her over, my intentions pure, or so I thought. I believed if I could expose her lies, I could save myself, even if that meant sacrificing everything I held dear. Little did I know she had already woven her darkness so tightly around her that my actions only fueled her fury. Her betrayal was a dagger, yes, but her treachery ran deeper than I dared to see. Memories flood back, the nights we spent in a haze of promises and whispered secrets, the way she used to look at me with such tenderness. Now I realize those eyes were masks, masks hiding the devil beneath. She had played me from the start, a master puppeteer pulling my strings just enough to keep me hooked, to keep me blind. The moment I discovered her involvement in the dark world of organ trafficking was the moment my world shattered into 1,000 pieces. I had thought I was doing right, exposing her, threatening to dismantle her operation. But that was a mistake, because in the shadows Elena was already planning her revenge, her silence bought with blood. I remember the frantic call, the voice that cracked in my ear like a whip. She's gone or she's dying. Count yourself lucky if she's still breathing. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, trying to hold on to the remnants of my sanity. I questioned everything, my own judgment, her love, the very fabric of what I believed was real. I'd trusted her, and now I was paying the price with my life, trapped behind these iron bars, fighting not just for my survival, but for the truth buried beneath layers of lies. The guard's footsteps draw near, his silhouette fleeting through the narrow slit in the darkness. I catch his eye. An unspoken understanding passes between us. He probably knows what Elena is capable of, just as I do now. She's out there somewhere, probably celebrating her supposed victory, her dark laughter echoing in her mind as she watches me rot behind these walls. But I refuse to let her win, refuse to let her darkness consume me. I've learned that betrayal is a poison, but it's also a catalyst, one that can ignite a fire within if only I can find the strength to keep burning. My mind spirals into chaos as I clutch the photo tighter. I wonder if there's any part of her left. The woman I loved, the woman I once believed in, or has she utterly been consumed by her own wickedness? I want to scream, to tear down these walls and hunt her down, but all I can do is sit in this suffocating silence, my heart pounding in my chest like a relentless drum. Every beat echoes her name, Elena, a name that now feels like a curse. I think of the moments I should have seen the signs, the subtle shifts in her behavior that I dismissed as paranoia or stress. Now I realize how blind I was, how easily trust can be warped into foolishness. The woman I thought I knew was just a mask, a carefully crafted illusion hiding the monster underneath. The realization tears through me with a violent force, and I curse my own naivety. I trusted her with my life, my soul, and she repaid me with betrayal so cold it froze my very bones. In this grim solitude, I make a silent vow. No matter how insurmountable the odds, I will find a way out. I won't let her darkness swallow me whole. Her treachery may have broken my body, but my mind remains unyielding. I am a survivor, and I will uncover the truth no matter how many lies she spun or how many enemies lurk in the shadows. I owe it to myself to fight, to expose her final secrets, to bring her darkness into the light, because if I give in, if I let her win, then Elena's shadow will become my tomb. I refuse to let her define my ending. I will find another way. An escape, a revenge, a justice that will drown her lies in the truth. The fire inside me flickers, fragile but fierce, and I cling to it desperately. Her smile may have been a mask, her love a lie, but my resolve is real. I will survive this nightmare, and one day, I'll make her pay, one way or another. The corridor's silence shattered as I heard heavy footsteps echoing closer, each step pounding like a countdown to my doom. My pulse skyrocketed, adrenaline flooding my veins, sharpening every sense. I knew instinctively this was her man. Eleanor's pawn sent to finish what she'd started. I clenched my fists, my palms sweating against the cold metal bars, trying to steady my trembling hands. The faint glow from the flickering overhead light cast elongated shadows, dancing sinisterly along the concrete walls. I kept my eyes fixed on the doorway, watching, waiting. The footsteps grew louder, deliberate, confident. I could almost taste her betrayal lingering in the air, a bitter tang that refused to dissolve. She thought I'd be caught unprepared, naive enough to believe she'd walk away clean, that her darkness would stay hidden beneath her sweet smile. I tightened my jaw and shifted my stance slightly, knowing I had only seconds before he'd step inside. My mind raced through every possibility. How many times had I underestimated her? How many lies had I swallowed without question? Now here I was, trapped behind bars, but I refused to be defeated. The walls around me might have confined my body, but my mind was still free, still vigilant. The door handle clicked softly, then turned. I saw his silhouette first, broad-shadowed, moving with calculated purpose. He was armed. I could tell by the way he moved, precision, efficiency, a predator on a hunt. My entire body tensed, a cold clarity washing over me. I didn't just want to survive, I needed to stop him. I shoved my foot against the metal grate beneath me, feeling the raw power pulse through my leg. With all the strength I could muster, I kicked the door open just as he stepped inside. The surprise on his face was fleeting, replaced by a sneer that spoke of confidence, of certainty that I was just another inmate destined to be silenced. But I knew better. In that split second I saw the flash of the gun tucked into his waistband, the glint of cold steel in his hand. My mind raced, calculating every move, every breath. I lunged forward, grabbing the nearest object, an heavy metal pipe, gripping it tightly. It was a gamble, a desperate act born of pure instinct, but I knew this was my moment. I swung with everything I had, aiming to incapacitate him, to turn the tide in my favor. The impact echoed through the corridor, metal clashing against flesh, the sound sharp and resonant. He staggered back, cursing under his breath, clutching his ribs. His weapon slipped from his grasp as I pressed the advantage, closing the gap, ready to end this nightmare. I could see the chaos in his eyes, the realization that he'd underestimated me. Elena's plan was unraveling, and I was not going down without a fight. My mind spun with thoughts of her lies, her treachery, and I swore that this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about revenge, about reclaiming what she stole from me, even if it meant risking everything. As I moved to disarm him, I knew how close I'd come to death, how thin the line was between life and oblivion. But I also understood something vital. Elena's puppeteering, her cold, calculated cruelty, wouldn't see her escape unscathed. Her act of hiring a hitman to end me inside these prison walls was her final mistake. I promised myself I'd see this through. I'd expose her lies, force her into the light, no matter how dark the path. The blood pounding in my ears wasn't just fear, it was resolve, pure and unyielding. This was my fight, my redemption. I would survive this. I would turn the tables, and I would make her pay for every ounce of betrayal she'd spun. The footsteps outside continued, relentless. But I was ready. I knew this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one where I took control, where I rewrote the story she tried to destroy. I clenched my jaw tighter, adrenaline surging anew, and prepared myself for whatever came next. Elena's shadow might have cast darkness over my life, but I refused to let her extinguish my light. Not here, not now. This fight was mine, and I would win. As the chaos erupted around me, I could feel the raw, brutal energy crackling through the air. The sharp crack of gunfire echoing through the prison corridors like a twisted symphony. I braced myself, every fiber of my body tensing in anticipation, knowing that Eleanor's treacherous plan had finally come to a head. The realization hit me with icy clarity. She had paid a hitman to eliminate me right here, inside these walls I thought kept me safe. My mind spun as I watched shadows dance and flicker in the dim light, trying to piece together what I'd always suspected. She'd truly gone that far. The cold steel of the bars pressed against my palms as I pushed myself upright, muscles screaming from the tension. My eyes darted from the chaos to the door, expecting the worst, expecting her mercenaries to burst through at any second. My pulse hammered in my ears, pounding in rhythm with the deafening crack of gunfire outside. I could smell the burnt powder, the metallic tang of blood already staining the air, and I knew with an odd kind of certainty that her desperation had driven her to this desperate act. And yet I didn't feel fear, only a burning, seething fury. As I scanned the scene, I caught sight of her shadow slipping away through a narrow corridor, a wicked smile lingering on her face, as if she'd already won. I clenched my fists, rage boiling over, knowing she'd betrayed me in the worst way possible. I'd handed her my trust, my love, only to discover her treachery was deeper than I'd ever imagined. She'd orchestrated this massacre, paid for my death in cold cash, and now she was sneaking away, leaving behind the chaos and the bloodshed she had set in motion. I could feel the adrenaline surging, sharp and relentless, propelling me to action. Every nerve in my body screamed to retaliate, to fight back against this hellish nightmare. I refused to let her win, refused to die in this place of steel and concrete, where her lies had almost succeeded. I knew that her shadow cast darkness, not just over my life, but over everything I believed in. Yet I also knew I had the strength to fight back. This wasn't just survival. It was a war for my soul. My mind raced, calculating every move, every breath, every ounce of pain and rage I could summon. The air around me was thick with dust and smoke, a testament to the violence that had just unfolded. I felt the cold grip of fear trying to tighten around my throat, but I pushed it aside, fueling my resolve. I would not be a victim, not today. Elena's deception had nearly cost me everything. But I had one last shot, to turn her treachery into my revenge. With a sudden surge, I lunged forward, muscles coiling with a vengeance I hadn't known I possessed. Every step I took was laced with purpose, every breath sharper and more urgent than the last. I could see it now. her silhouette vanishing into the shadows, her plans unraveling as I refused to be left behind, a pawn in her twisted game. I had handed her over, yes, but I was not finished playing my part. Not yet. The taste of betrayal was bitter on my tongue, but the fire inside me was hotter than ever. I would confront her, expose her lies, and make her answer for this exquisite cruelty. The chaos outside raged on, but I knew I had the power, hidden beneath the rubble and blood, to rewrite this story. It was my fight, and I was ready to claim what was mine. No matter what came next, I promised myself I'd survive. I'd stand tall, claw my way out of this nightmare, and make Elena pay for every tear, every lie, every moment she tried to steal from me. As I pushed through the debris and ricocheting bullets, I felt the weight of her betrayal settle into my bones. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I could taste the bitter promise of revenge, and I knew I had only just begun to fight. Her shadow might have cast darkness over my life, but I refused to let her extinguish my flame. Not here, not now. This was my moment to rise, to turn the tables, to show her that betrayal would never break me, that I was stronger than her treachery. And I would win. As the chaos outside finally settled into a tense, suffocating silence, I found myself alone in that cold, dimly lit cell, trembling from the adrenaline that refused to subside. My eyes darted around, searching for any sign, any clue that might tell me what Elena was really up to now. The weight of her treachery clung to me like a second skin, but beneath it all a flicker of something darker. Determination, maybe, or pure rage, urged me forward. Then I saw it. A tiny, carefully folded piece of fabric tucked into the seam of a fellow inmate's shirt. I caught a glimpse of a strange, deliberate pattern, a subtle signal, a secret message. My heart hammered as I carefully lifted the edge of the fabric, fingertips trembling with anticipation. It was a note written in a hurried scrawl, hidden within the folds of an ordinary prison uniform. The words chilled me to the bone. Finish what I started. Her handwriting was unmistakable, erratic, desperate yet meticulous, as if she'd taken the time to craft her final message. I clutched the fabric tightly, feeling its rough texture against my palms, and in that moment, the pieces snapped into place. Elena's scheme hadn't been confined to the outside world. She had planned this from the start. Her betrayal wasn't just an act of treachery. It was an intricate web spun through years of deception, culminating here, within these prison walls, to eliminate me once and for all. The sting of her message burned hotter than the cold steel of the bars that held me. She was still playing her game, even behind bars. I could see her face, smug, confident, smiling that familiar, cruel smile that haunted my every waking thought. I clenched my fists, feeling my nails bite into my palms, trying to hold back the surge of fury. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival, about snatching the last shred of power from someone who thought she had already won. I pressed the note against my chest, the rough fabric a stark reminder of how deep her treachery ran. This wasn't just a message, this was a threat. She wanted me dead, buried, erased. The betrayal cut so deep that I could feel it echoing through my bones. Eleanor had paid someone, probably the same hitman I'd tried to track down before I was caught, to finish me off inside these walls. She thought she could silence me for good, that her twisted plan would finally be fulfilled, and that I'd be nothing but a faded memory. But I wasn't going down that easily. No, I refused to let her win, not after everything we'd been through. Her message was a spark, no, a roaring flame, that ignited a fierce resolve within me. It was a challenge, a dare to fight back even harder. I knew her tricks, her lies, her manipulations. I'd seen her betray everyone around her, including me, so many times before. But this time I was prepared. I needed to act fast. The first step was to hide the note. I couldn't let anyone else find it, especially not the guards or the other inmates who might be loyal to her. Carefully, I folded the fabric back into its hiding place, tucking it deep into my sleeve. I had to keep it secret, plan my next move in silence. Eleanor believed she had me cornered, helpless here in this prison, but she underestimated the fire still burning inside me. My mind raced. I had to figure out what her next move would be. Was she sending more messages? Giving instructions to her contact outside? I knew I couldn't trust anyone, especially not the guards, not the system, not the police. The game was far from over. Her shadow still loomed over me, but I was no longer a pawn in her cruel game. I was the player now, As I sat there in that darkness, clutching the fabric, I felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just a fight for my life. It was a battle for my soul, an ongoing war that only I could win. Eleanor had betrayed me in the worst way imaginable, but her plans to end me inside these walls would only serve to awaken the fury I'd kept buried for too long. I would watch, I would wait, and I would strike back. Her message was clear. I had to be ready for whatever came next, because I knew she wasn't done yet. She never was. But neither was I. This was only the beginning. As I listened to my cellmate whisper about Elena's latest deals, I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. His words struck like a punch to the gut. Elena had formed alliances with local traffickers, ones I'd never even heard of before. The reality sank in. My life was precariously hanging by a thread, and every second I spent in this hellhole brought new dangers. He leaned in, voice hushed but intense. "You don't understand, man. Elena's got her fingers in everything now. These guys, they don't play fair. If she decides you're a problem, it's over. No second chances. You're toast." His eyes flicked to the bars as if expecting someone to overhear, making the warning all the more visceral. I clenched my fists, trying to ignore the pounding in my skull. Elena's betrayal was one thing, but this was a whole new level of danger. I'd thought I had come to terms with her treachery, but hearing about her real ties to the underworld, the kind that ran brutal and deep, made my stomach churn. I'd handed her over, yes, but I'd never truly believed she'd escalate beyond her manipulations. Until now. I could picture her. Her calculating smile, the way her eyes flickered with satisfaction every time she played her cards right. She was a master at betrayal, a puppeteer pulling strings unseen. Now those strings led her into a dark, violent world that I could never fully understand. And I was caught right in the middle. My mind spiraled as I considered my options. Could I run? No, the walls were too high, the guards too watchful. Could I fight? Not here. Not with the odds so stacked against me. The only thing I could do was gather information, wait for the right moment, and prepare my next move. I knew Elena. She was patient, calculating. She'd wait, let me think I was safe. But I wasn't. The danger lurked outside these prison walls, ready to pounce the moment I let my guard down. The idea that she'd sunk so far into the depths of the criminal underground made my blood boil. My enemies now weren't just the corrupt guards or the inmates who looked at me with suspicion. They were her, and the ruthless traffickers she'd allied with. I wondered if she ever considered what she'd become, or if her obsession for power had numbed her to the violence she'd unleashed. I pictured her, plotting her next move, her voice whispering venomous instructions to her new allies. I could see her, a silhouette against the flickering light, smiling at how she'd outplayed everyone, me included. Yet beneath that veneer of confidence, I knew she was vulnerable. She'd underestimated me before, and she'd miscalculated this time too. The faint echo of footsteps outside my cell reminded me that I was never truly alone. The guards, the other prisoners, they all watched, waiting for her signal or for her to slip up. I had to stay sharp. I had to listen. Every word, every glance could be a clue to her next move, or the opening I needed to turn this nightmare around. I clenched my jaw, tasting the bitter irony that I had delivered her into this chaos. I handed her over, thinking it was the only way to survive her wrath. But now I realized it might have been the worst mistake of my life. I had set a trap, and Elena had crawled into the shadows, deepening her grip on this savage world. Her alliances with traffickers were not just threats, they were weapons. Deadly, indiscriminate. I imagined her searing smile as she negotiated with those monsters, confident that her new partners would do her bidding without question. But I also knew that power here was fragile, that one wrong move could turn her allies against her. And maybe, just maybe, I was the piece that could set that chain reaction in motion. I couldn't afford to be naive. I learned that the hard way. I had to wait for the right moment to strike. I had to find the crack in her armor, the weak spot where I could slip through. That was the only way out of this alive. I had to keep my senses sharp, my mind colder than ever. Elena's manipulations had brought me to this point, but they wouldn't define my end. I knew she thought she had the upper hand, but I also knew her arrogance was her greatest weakness. She'd underestimated my resolve from the start, and now she'd underestimate my patience. This game was far from over, and I was ready to play it on my terms. The dark corners of my mind whispered that I was on the brink of war, something far worse than prison walls, far worse than betrayal. Whatever came next, I'd be ready, because I wasn't just fighting to escape or to stay alive. I was fighting to restore what little dignity I still had left, to take back control of my fate. And when the moment finally arrived, I'd strike with everything I had. Helena's empire of shadows was built on lies, but I'd expose her, burn her world to the ground and make her pay for all she'd done. My silence was thick now, but it was also my strength. I was biding my time, and when I finally moved, I'd shatter her illusions of power. This wasn't just a game anymore. It was war, and I was prepared to win. I refused to accept that my story would end behind these cold, unforgiving bars. The steel grated against my palms as I examined the tiny cracks in the prison wall, imperfections I had learned to exploit during my years in special operations. Memories surged, silent drills, covert escapes, moments when every second counted and hesitation meant death. Those skills, buried deep beneath layers of regret and betrayal, suddenly flared to life. I had always believed in the power of precision, of calculated moves. Now, as I mapped my escape plan, I reminded myself that desperation could sharpen the mind better than any training. Helena thought she had me trapped, cornered by her web of lies and violence, but I knew her game too well. She underestimated my resilience, my ability to adapt when survival was on the line. Looking around my cell, I spotted an old piece of wire curled in the corner, discarded, forgotten but perfect for what I needed. I clenched my jaw, gripping it tightly, feeling the cold metal bite into my palm. A reminder that I was still alive, still fighting. Every breath I took was a silent vow I wouldn't die here, not without a fight. My mind replayed the faces, her smug smile, the way she paid off the hitman, the assurance that I would never see the light of day again. I knew she thought she had silenced me, that my mouth would be shut forever, but I had learned long ago that silence was a double-edged sword. It could be a weapon, a shield, or a trap. I had to move fast. Time was a luxury I no longer possessed. My past, years of clandestine operations, covert extraction, and survival tactics, was my secret weapon now. I remembered every lesson, every whisper of strategy that had kept me alive through worse odds. I could still hear my mentor's voice in my head, reminding me that the element of surprise was everything. As darkness cloaked the prison like a shroud, I shifted into the shadows, my senses sharpened. I knew Elena's men would be watching, waiting for any slip. But I had learned to read their weaknesses, like wolves scenting blood. I had to use that. I moved silently, each step calculated, each breath controlled. The narrow passageways opened before me like veins leading to freedom. A faint glow flickered ahead, an old maintenance hatch. I had to disable the security lock, but I remembered a trick from my days in the field. A small piece of wire, a makeshift lockpick. I worked swiftly, my hands trembling only slightly. The click was almost satisfying, my ticket to the outside world. Freedom was close, but I knew better than to trust it blindly. Elena's reach extended even into these shadows. Her betrayal cut deep, and I had paid dearly for my trust. I had to be prepared for anything, an ambush, a trap, a final shot at redemption. I slipped through the hatch into the damp, dark alley beyond, the scent of rain in the air. The city was alive, indifferent to my plight. My heart pounded fiercely. This was the moment where everything could collapse or elevate. I pulled out a small, battered picture from my pocket, a reminder of what I was fighting for. The truth, my dignity, my rescue. My mind raced, planning my next move. No longer confined by prison walls, I was free in body but still held captive by the shadows of my past. Yet I knew that this was merely the first step. Eleanor's betrayal had set this chain in motion, but I was determined to break it. The game had changed, and I was ready to lead it. I had one last ace up my sleeve, my knowledge, my training, the cold steel of resolve. The streets were my battlefield now, and I was ready to take back what was mine. Elena thought she could control the chaos, but she had no idea what I was capable of when pushed to the edge. I would expose her, dismantle her empire of lies, and make her pay one way or another. The night was my cover, and I was its ghost. I slipped into the shadows, every step bringing me closer to vengeance. I had survived betrayal, imprisonment, and the darkness within myself. Now I was poised to turn the tide, to strike back with everything I had. Victory wasn't just about escaping. I was fighting to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my future. This was war, and I was prepared to win. As I moved through the dimly lit corridor during the routine inspection, the tension in the air was almost suffocating. I kept my movements measured, knowing full well that the slightest misstep could be the difference between life and death in this place. I could feel the gaze of the guard lock onto me, trying to assert dominance, trying to intimidate. I refused to show weakness. Instead, I let my eyes flick lazily in his direction, a subtle challenge that he probably didn't even notice. He stepped closer, voice low and commanding. "Keep moving, or I'll find a reason to drag you into the shadows." His words echoed, but I knew better than to let him rattle me. Beneath my sleeve, my fingers curled instinctively around the small, sharp knife I had concealed there. I'd made sure to hide it well, knowing that if Elena's plans truly extended to ending me inside these walls, I needed a concealed ace up my sleeve. The moment he reached out to check my cell, I kept my face impassive, even as my heart hammered in my chest. As he turned away to inspect someone else, I subtly shifted my sleeve, feeling the slick curve of the tiny blade against my palm. Just one quick move. If Elena's betrayal was real, I'd be ready to strike. I'd learned over the years that survival often meant being prepared to do whatever it took. No matter how dark or desperate the act, I kept my eyes fixed ahead. Eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by much anymore. The guard's attention was elsewhere, and I pressed my back against the cold stone wall, listening to the muffled sounds of footsteps, distant conversations. The flicker of memory crossed my mind, her shadow slipping away, that haunting smile frozen in my thoughts. Eleanor had handed me over with a strange mixture of tenderness and treachery, her voice whispering promises she never intended to keep. I handed her over too, believing I was doing what was right at the time, not realizing that her betrayal would come full circle, that she would pay for her treachery in ways I couldn't foresee. Now, even as I watched her disappear into the shadows, I knew that what I had given her was more than just my trust. It was my life, and she had taken it, or so I had thought. I'd come to believe that I was meant to be broken, that her manipulations would silence me forever. But I was wrong. The game was far from over. The guard's hand brushed past my sleeve again, and I clenched my jaw. I was ready. My muscles tensed, prepared for that split second when I might need to act. Elena's plans to eliminate me inside this prison were as clear as day. She'd paid a hitman, an assassin who specialized in clean, silent kills. That was her way, cold, calculated, ruthless. But I knew her game better than she thought. I knew the dark corners, the silent threats, the whispers of danger lurking just behind her smiles. I kept the knife pressed against my inner forearm, hidden from sight, but always ready. If Elena truly decided to strike, I'd be ready to strike back, faster, sharper, with everything I had. I'd been counting on my instincts, my training, the years of surviving chaos. It was only a matter of time before I would need to use that little blade, to defend myself, or to end her twisted plans before they could fully unfold. The guard finally moved away, satisfied, or perhaps just bored. I took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the cold steel against my skin. My mind was already racing, calculating the next move, plotting how I'd get out, how I'd turn the tables. Elena thought she had me cornered, but she underestimated me. She'd paid her price, and I'd pay mine. On my terms, not hers. I pressed my back against the wall once more, my senses heightened, every nerve on edge. The dark had become my refuge, and I knew that I was in a war to reclaim what was stolen, to survive the deadly game Elena had set in motion. Inside this prison, beneath the shadows and the fear, I was biding my time. When the moment came, I would strike. Hard, merciless, and without hesitation. Her betrayal was the storm that had set everything ablaze, but I was no longer just a pawn. I was the storm's eye, and soon the chaos would turn against her. I could feel it in my bones. This was just the beginning of my revenge. As I sit here in this dim, echoing cell, the image of Elena haunts me with relentless clarity. She stands there, her face icy and pristine, a cruel smile dancing on her lips as she hands over the money, her face illuminated by the flickering neon light from the corridor outside. I see her perfectly, that cold beauty, the way her eyes flicker with satisfaction, knowing she's just sealed my fate. I felt the weight of her betrayal like a stone crushing my chest, but even amidst that despair, A flicker of fire ignited within me. She had paid for my silence, my destruction, my death, and I would make her regret every single cent. The memory of her smile, so calculated, so detached, fuels a bitter resolve I can barely contain. I replayed the scene in my head over and over, imagining every detail. How her lips curled into that perfect ice-cold grin as she delivered her final blow. How she watched me helpless as the man she hired tiptoed away, just another pawn in her game. I remembered the moment I handed her over, my hands trembling, my heart pounding in my ears, yet my mind already racing with silent plans. I had played along, pretending to accept her betrayal, but inside, I had already begun to plot my comeback. I had always known she was capable of crossing every line. Her charm was a mask, and behind it lurked a ruthless, calculating predator. She was the kind of woman who paid to see others fall, who thrived on power and control. I had underestimated her once, but no more. Now every fiber of my being screams that I won't go quietly. I will turn her own treachery into her undoing. She thought she could buy her way out of consequence. She thought she could silence me forever. But I am not so easily silenced. The room is silent except for the faint, distant hum of the prison's machinery. I focus on the small details, the roughness of the cold metal beneath my fingertips, the slight tremor in my muscles, the faint scent of damp concrete and stale air. I breathe in deeply, trying to steady the storm inside me. My mind flashes back to the faces I saw that night. Guards, inmates, Elena's cold, unfeeling expression. I analyze every movement, every breath, every shadow. I know I need to be patient. I know I need to wait for the right moment. When her guard is down, when she believes I am broken or defeated, that is when I will strike. I am no longer the naive man I once was. I have been broken, yes, but I am also hardened. Betrayal has sharpened me, turned my pain into a weapon. Eleanor's money, her lies, they are just fuel for the fire that now consumes me. I can almost see her face twisted in shock when she realizes I am still alive, still fighting. Her perfect plan is crumbling piece by piece. I will ensure that she regrets every dollar she spent, every lie she told, every time she looked into the mirror and saw her own darkness reflected back. My eyes flick to the faint crack beneath the door. That small opening is my window, my chance. I have to wait for the right signal, for the moment when her arrogance exposes her vulnerabilities. Until then I stay quiet, plotting with everything I have. I am a predator in a cage, but I am also the hunter. And Elena, with her ruthless smile and icy gaze, is the only prey I intend to catch. She may have hired her assassin, believed she had sealed my fate, but the game isn't over. Not yet. My mind is already working on how I will turn her treachery against her, how I will make her understand that no amount of money, no mask of charm can hide the truth of what she truly is. I will expose her lies, unravel her carefully built facade. When I do, her smile will be the last thing she ever shows the world, cracked, shattered, and finally powerless. In this darkness, I find clarity. Elena's betrayal is just the beginning of my reckoning. I will rise from these shadows. I will reclaim my life, and I will make her regret every decision that led us here. Because in the end, betrayal only feeds the fire of revenge. And I'm just getting started. The flickering glow of my makeshift phone illuminates the dim corner of my cell as I carefully tap out a message to my only hope, an external informant who claims he's got proof that Elena's hands are soaked in more than just lies. Every word I send feels like a gamble, a fragile bridge between me and salvation, knowing that if caught, everything I've fought for could vanish in an instant. I pause, listening for any sign of suspicion from the guards, then continue. My fingers move with purpose, weaving a digital thread of trust that I desperately need to hold on to. I tell him about the secret meetings, the coded exchanges, the way Eleanor's eyes dart around when she thinks no one is watching. I describe her connection to the traffickers, the way she manipulates her influence, using her charm as a cover for the darkness she's buried deep beneath her polished veneer. Each keystroke feels heavier than the last, like I'm carving my own future out of the stone of this prison. I think about the risk. What if this message gets intercepted? What if Elena's spies are lurking even here, waiting for any hint of my rebellion? Still, I push forward, because I know I need this leverage to turn her empire of lies against her. The informant responds swiftly, a whisper of reassurance in the digital void. He's got the images, a clandestine transaction in the shadows, The faces of crooked officials, Elena's signature unmistakable. I breathe a cautious sigh of relief, clinging to the hope that these pieces will fit together into a case strong enough to topple her. I imagine her face when she realizes her carefully constructed world is collapsing, the shock, the panic, the fury. It's almost worth the danger I'm in. I think about the night I handed her over, the sickening feeling in my gut as I betrayed my own instincts for what I thought was the greater good. Little did I know that her treachery would run even deeper. That she paid a killer to silence me, inside these walls where I'm supposed to be safe, where I'm supposed to be rehabilitated. But betrayal has a way of twisting everything, turning hope into fury, trust into caution. My mind races with possibilities. If I can gather enough evidence, I can expose her to the world, show everyone what lies beneath her polished surface. I will make her regret every lie, every manipulation, every time she looked at herself in the mirror and saw only her reflection of power. I will become the nightmare she never anticipated, a ghost haunting her conscience with the truth she tried to bury. I clutch the phone tighter, feeling the cold weight of my confinement pressing down on me. Yet somehow this small act of rebellion sparks a fire inside. I am not defeated, not yet. The darkness around me has become a crucible, forging a new version of myself, more ruthless, more relentless. I will wait, watch, and strike when the moment is ripe. Eleanor's empire is crumbling, and I am the storm she never saw coming. In this silence, I realize that these messages are more than just pieces of evidence. They are my lifeline, my way out. If I can hold on long enough, if I can turn her own secrets against her, I will finally shatter her illusion of control. And when that day comes, I will be ready to walk free from these shadows, to reclaim my life, and to make her pay for every ounce of betrayal she has spun. Beneath the surface of this quiet night, I feel the surge of something darker, vengeance, yes, but also the faint hope of redemption. Because sometimes the truth is the only weapon I have left, and I plan to wield it with precision, no matter the cost. Elena's lies are my ammunition now, and I swear I will use them to bring her crashing down, stone by stone, lie by lie, until there's nothing left but the truth and the ruin of her empire. The pain in my leg shoots through my body like a jagged blade, each pulse a cruel reminder of my vulnerability. Blood trickles down, pooling beneath me as I clutch at the wound, my breath shallow and ragged. Every heartbeat feels like a thunderous drum against my ribs, yet my mind fights to stay sharp, to cling to the fragments of clarity that remain. I can't afford to slip, not now. Not when I've come so far, when I've finally begun to see the cracks forming in Elena's fortress of lies. I grit my teeth, ignoring the searing ache as I roll onto my side, pressing my palm against the wound, in a desperate attempt to stem the bleeding. The cold metal of the prison cell seems less oppressive than the searing heat radiating from my leg. I know she did this. Elena, with her polished smile and ruthless ambition, she thought she could silence me forever, but she underestimated my resolve. Every ounce of pain fuels my determination. It's a reminder that I am still alive, still fighting even if my body protests against it. My thoughts flicker to her calculated cruelty. She orchestrated this, I have no doubt. The betrayal isn't just in the lies she spun, but in the cold, calculated method she used to take me down. A bullet, meant to be a clean kill, missed its mark, but only by a fraction. I can still hear the echo of the gunshot reverberating inside these walls, a haunting reminder of how close I came to the end. And yet here I am, breathing, fighting, plotting my next move. I press harder on the wound, feeling the sting of contact, and whisper a silent vow. Elena's empire is crumbling, but I refuse to die without reshaping the ruins into her nightmare. I'm painfully aware that this injury might slow me down, but it won't stop me. No, every drop of blood spilled from me will be a drop of her own downfall. I imagine her face, pale, triumphant, thinking she's finally finished me. But she's wrong. Her victory will be short-lived, and I will make sure of it. A sharp wave of dizziness washes over me, faint spots dancing before my eyes. I clench my jaw, fighting to stay conscious, to keep the chaos from overtaking my mind. I need to stay alert, to listen, to wait. The darkness pressing in around me threatens to swallow me whole, but I refuse to surrender to it. My hands tremble as I reach into my pocket for the tiny, battered phone I managed to smuggle in. It's a fragile thread, but it's everything I have left. My connection to salvation, to justice, to revenge. I manage to unlock it, fingers trembling, and send a message, one that carries more weight than any bullet. "Help me," I type, each word deliberate and raw. "I know I won't last long if I don't get out of here soon, but this message is my last thread of hope." My eyes drift shut for a moment, picturing her smirk, her lies, her phony empire, then snap open again. I can't let her win, not like this. I think about Elena's face, the image of her power, the way she manipulated everyone around her. I played my part well, delivering her over, thinking I was sealing my own fate or maybe saving myself in a twisted way. But her betrayal was her undoing. She paid a hitman, yes, but I've come to see that her greatest mistake was thinking she could control everything, even death. Now, battered, bleeding, but unbroken, I summon every ounce of strength. I won't let her mark the end of me. When they find me, I'll be a ghost, a whisper in her nightmares. And when the time is right, I will crawl out of this darkness, unmask her secrets, and turn her empire into rubble, including her illusions of invincibility. The pain intensifies, a relentless reminder that I am still here, still fighting. Each breath is a battle, each heartbeat a promise that I will not surrender to her twisted game. Elena's lies, her cruelty, they are fuel for my revenge. I will wield them like a weapon, slicing through her defenses, exposing her for the monster she truly is. And in those final moments, I hold on to the hope that my pain isn't for nothing, that my suffering will serve a purpose. To bring her to her knees, to remind her that no one, not even the most powerful, is beyond retribution. I will survive this injury, this betrayal, this nightmare, because I have no other choice. And when I do, I will be free. Eliminate the darkness, ignite the truth, and watch Elena's empire burn to the ground, piece by piece. The clang of the heavy door echoed behind me as I sat in the dim corner of my cell, the cold concrete seeping into my bones. I had learned to listen intently, to read every sound, every shift of shadow. That's when I saw him. The man who shouldn't have been there, yet somehow he was. An intrusion I hadn't expected, a whisper that disrupted the suffocating silence. He approached slowly, eyes flickering with a secret that didn't belong behind iron bars. I recognized him immediately, one of Elena's men, or at least that's what I had been told. But this time he didn't come to threaten. He came with something else entirely, something that made my pulse quicken and my instincts sharpen. His voice was low, gravelly, almost conspiratorial. "I've been watching, waiting for the right moment," he said, voice edged with a dangerous promise. "You're not just some pawn in Elena's game. There's more, something she's not telling you, and I can help you take her down." At first I hesitated. My mind raced through every possible angle, every reason why trusting this stranger could be a fatal mistake. But the flicker of hope ignited in his eyes, the flicker I hadn't seen in so long, made me pause. I had nothing to lose, my body battered, my spirit bruised, yet my mind still sharp enough to recognize a rare opportunity. He slid a crumpled paper through the bars, a plan, a network, a lead on Elena's secret dealings. My fingers trembled as I grasped it, feeling the weight of it, proof that amid the chaos there was a way out, a way to bring Elena down from her throne of lies and bloodshed. "Why now?" I asked, voice hoarse but steady. He shrugged, a crooked smile curling his lips. "Because I want out. Elena's corruption runs deeper than you think, and I can't stand to watch her burn everything to the ground without getting my piece of the pie. But I see in you something more, something worth fighting for. You're not just a pawn either. You're a survivor." The words hit me harder than any punch I'd taken in this hellhole. For so long I had clung to the idea that my suffering was punishment, that my pain was punishment. But now I saw it differently. My pain was the catalyst. My suffering, the spark that could ignite a revolution. I could feel a fire reigniting inside me, distant, faint, but undeniably there. I looked into his eyes, trying to gauge his true intent. Was he genuinely offering salvation or merely another trap? My gut told me to trust him, at least for now. I tucked the paper into my shirt, securing it as if it were my lifeline. The game had shifted, and I was no longer a mere victim. I was a player, an agent of my own fate. He leaned in closer, voice dropping even lower. "You're going to get out of here, and when you do, it's time to hit back hard. Elena thinks she's untouchable, that her empire is invincible. But all empires crumble when the foundation is rotten. I can help you expose her, tear down her walls, and finally make her pay for everything she's done. A flicker of anticipation surged through me. This was the edge I needed, a crack in her armor, a chink in her defenses. The road ahead would be treacherous, full of risk and betrayal, but I'd never been more certain of one thing. I wasn't going to let her ruin me completely. Not this time. My mind raced with plans, shadows of revenge flickering brighter. I imagined the moment I'd walk free, the moment I'd see her fall, faces twisted with shock and fury. I would be the ghost haunting her dreams, the spectre that refused to die until she paid the price. The man's words echoed in my head as I sat back, contemplating this unexpected alliance. I knew there was no turning back now. Eleanor's empire was built on lies, and I had the blueprint to bring it crashing down. It was only a matter of surviving this night, of trusting the right voice, of waiting for the perfect moment. Because I had learned one thing in this dark, twisted game. Hope was a dangerous thing, but sometimes it was the only thing left worth holding on to, and I was holding on to it tightly now. The fight was far from over. It had only just begun. The moment I realized Elena had sent someone to kill me in this prison, my blood ran cold, yet the instinct to survive ignited a fierce fire within me. I could feel the weight of the steel bars pressing against my skin as I stared into the shadows that moved across the dimly lit corridor. Her treachery hit me like a punch to the gut. I had handed her over, trusted her to play her game only to discover her true colors. That haunted smile she'd worn as she watched me leave, so confident, so manipulative, now felt like a dagger twisting in my gut. I clenched my fists, feeling the rough calluses under my fingertips, and in that instant my mind shifted gears. No longer was I merely a prisoner, I was a creature fighting for my life, for every inch of ground I could claw back. The faint sound of footsteps echoed closer, subtle but unmistakable. Someone was coming and I had to act fast. The adrenaline surged, sharpening my senses, sharpening every nerve ending. I knew Elena's game, knew her internal hunger for control, her ruthless drive to erase anyone who stood in her way. The first blow came suddenly, a heavy object smashing into the side of my head. Pain exploded through my skull, blinding me for a second, but my survival instincts kicked in. I pushed through the haze, dodging the next strike, grasping the shattered piece of the broken chair that had been hurled at me. Metal clanged against metal as I fought desperately, the cold sweat on my brow mixing with the blood that trickled down my temple. I refused to go down. Not here, not like this. By sheer willpower, I managed to block another attack, my arm instinctively raising to shield myself. I swung back, connecting with a brutal shove that sent my assailant stumbling. I didn't recognize their face in the darkness, but I knew this was Elena's handiwork. She'd sent her assassin, her puppet, to snuff me out, an ending she thought would serve her perfect final decisive. But I was not finished. I had come too far, fought too hard to be taken out by her petty, vicious ploy. The fight spilled into the narrow corridor, a brutal ballet of desperation and rage. My fists connected, each punch fueled by a storm of betrayal and vengeance. I felt the rough texture of the guard's skin under my knuckles, saw the flicker of fear in his eyes just before I knocked him unconscious. His weight collapsed onto the floor and I took a breath, momentarily regaining my composure amid the chaos. Blood was pouring from my split lip, my vision blurred, but my mind was sharper than ever. Elena's lies, her manipulations, her cruelty, they all fueled my resolve. I darted into an empty cell, locking the door behind me, lungs heaving with every ragged breath. My hand instinctively reached into my pocket, clutching the small hidden blade I'd managed to conceal. Elena had underestimated me, thinking she could silence me in this dark, confined hell. I was wounded, yes, battered and bruised, but still alive. And what she didn't understand was that I had already begun to turn her own game against her. From the shadows I could hear footsteps retreating, the sounds of her henchmen retreating, thinking the danger was over. But I knew better. Elena's venom ran deep, and her plans had only just begun to unravel. I had been marked, yes, but I was no easy prey. My survival was a silent rebellion, a testament to my refusal to bow, to break, to die in her hands. I pressed my back against the cold wall, trying to steady my trembling hands. My mind raced, every detail etched sharply into my memory. Elena's face, her voice, her cold eyes, all of it a perfect storm that had brought me here. Now it was time for me to turn the tide. I had to find a way out of this maze, out of her trap, and expose her before she tightened her grip forever. This fight was far from over. Elena believed she was invincible, that her shadow stretched over everything and everyone. But I knew better. I had seen her cracks, her moment of arrogance, her overconfidence, and I promised myself I would use those cracks to bring her down. I would survive this, I would retaliate, and I would ensure she paid for each betrayal, each lie, each broken promise. The darkness was thick around me, but within it I found a strange clarity. Elena's betrayal had lit a fire I thought had long died out. It was time to turn the flames into a blaze. I was battered, yes, but I was also unbroken. I would take her down piece by piece, starting with the shadows she thought she owned, and ending with her empire crumbling under its own rot. Because a game played with such treachery is destined to fall, and I was determined to be the one to watch it burn. As I sat across from the old inmate, the one who had been here longer than most, with a face carved from years of hardship and secrets, I felt a shiver run down my spine. His eyes, cloudy yet sharp, flicked to mine with an unsettling intensity. I knew I had to tread carefully. Old stories in this place never came without a price. "So, Eleanor," he began, voice gravelly yet deliberate, "she's not just some cold-hearted manipulator, you know. There's a darkness that runs through her veins, deeper than most realize." I leaned in, eager yet wary, as he took a long breath, the smell of stale air and unwashed linen filling the space between us. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I buzzed with anticipation. I had suspected as much. Her involvement in the criminal underworld, her ties to organized crime, her corrupt dealings with crooked officials. But hearing it from someone who had seen her in her element, it was a different weight altogether. He chuckled softly, a bitter sound that echoed softly against the concrete walls. "Elena's history is stained with blood and lies. She's been playing the long game from the start. Organized crime, bribes, disappearances, you name it. She's not just a manipulator, she's a queenpin in her own right, ruling over corrupted networks that stretch across cities and borders." His eyes flicked towards me, as if expecting my reaction. "I always wondered," I whispered, "how someone like her, how she rose so high so fast." He nodded slowly, a twisted smile curling his lips. "It's simple, really. Power is her drug. She's killed for it, bought her way through every obstacle. Her hands are dirtier than you can imagine, but she's clever, always hiding her tracks, always one step ahead." His gaze darkened. "And she's not afraid to burn bridges, to crush anyone who gets in her way." I took a breath, the weight of his words settling heavily in my chest. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about an empire built on blood and corruption. I had handed her over, yes, but I had always sensed she was dangerous, more than dangerous. She was a predator, and I was her prey. "Why did she come to me?" I asked, voice trembling slightly. "Why did she want me dead? What was her reason?" He hesitated, then leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "Because you knew too much. Because you posed a threat. Maybe not now, but someday. Elena doesn't forget and she doesn't forgive. She saw in you a loose thread that could unravel her entire operation. So she hired a hitman, someone she trusts implicitly, to take you out while you were behind bars thinking you couldn't fight back." A cold sweat broke out on my skin. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd anticipated. I had thought I was merely a pawn, someone she used and discarded. But knowing she'd put a hit on me, someone she paid to end my life inside these prison walls, made everything feel more personal, more visceral. He looked at me intently, the corners of his mouth curling into a grim smile. "You should have known when she handed you over, that it was never just about punishment. It was about sending a message, that she controls everything and everyone. And now here you are, alive but not for long if she gets her way." My mind spun with the implications. I had underestimated her reach, her ruthlessness. Every step I took to expose her, to bring her down, had to be recalibrated in light of this new knowledge. She wasn't just a manipulator. She was a master strategist, a cold-blooded killer who'd stop at nothing. The conversation lingered in the air, heavy and oppressive. I realized that Eleanor's past, her true origins, were far darker than I'd imagined. What I'd seen in her, the calculated cruelty, the icy veneer, was only a fraction of what truly lurked beneath. She had carved her path through blood, corruption, and fear, and she wouldn't hesitate to do it again. A part of me felt a flicker of hope that this revelation might be my key to breaking free, to fighting back with even more resolve. But another part, the darker, more cautious part, knew that I had to tread even more carefully now. The woman I thought I knew was just a mask. Beneath it lurked something far more sinister and unstoppable. I sat back, processing everything, knowing that the game had just taken a turn into a new, more dangerous phase. Elena's shadow stretched even further, and I was caught right in its path. But I wasn't ready to fall yet. Not while I still had an ounce of breath, a spark of defiance. I'd gather my strength piece by piece, and when the time came, I'd strike back, harder than she ever expected. The clang of metal on metal echoed through the dim corridor as I swiftly ducked behind a pillar, my breath hitching despite the adrenaline surging through me. I could hear the muffled footsteps approaching, a calculated, deliberate gait that betrayed their confidence. Whoever was after me knew I was close, but they underestimated my readiness. I had been trained for moments like this, days, months, years of honing my instincts into razor-sharp precision. My fingers brushed the cold grip of the concealed knife in my waistband, a familiar weight that grounded me amid chaos. I had only seconds to act. Peering around the corner, I caught sight of the two guards, their eyes scanning, weapons at the ready. I moved with a fluidity born of muscle memory, slipping into the shadows like a predator stalking prey. Every step I took was silent, calculated, no room for mistakes. I spotted a narrow ventilation duct just ahead, a slim opening that I knew I could squeeze through if I timed it right. The guards' backs were turned, their focus on the other end of the hall. I sprinted, silent as a whisper, and shoved my shoulder against the grate. It didn't give at first, but I brute-forced it open, prying the rusted latch free with a quick twist. The narrow tunnel beckoned, offering a fleeting chance at escape. Crawling through the claustrophobic space, I felt the rough metal scraping my skin, my pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't have time to second-guess. Every second mattered. I remembered the layout I had memorized, the weak points in the security system I'd studied obsessively. This was my window, my shot at exposing her, and I needed to reach the outside before she realized I'd slipped away. Emerging into a dimly lit service corridor, I moved with purpose. My mind raced, calculating my next move. I had to get to the safe house, reveal everything, her crimes, her connection to the organ trafficking ring, and finally put an end to her reign. If I hesitated now, I'd be caught, silenced, or worse. Suddenly, a sharp noise behind me made my blood run cold. I spun, instincts flaring. Footsteps, fast, heavy, coming from down the hall. I didn't have time to think. I vaulted over a stack of crates and darted into a side room, slamming the door shut behind me. I slid down to the floor, pressing my ear to the door, listening for signs of pursuit. A faint click told me I'd been detected. I reached into my pocket, pulling out a small, jagged piece of wire, an improvised lockpick I'd fashioned from discarded metal. The lock groaned, protesting, but I persisted, every second feeling like an eternity. When the latch finally gave way, I pushed the door open just enough to slip out. Outside, the night was thick with fog, obscuring my view but not my determination. I forced myself into a crouch, moving swiftly across the alley, heart pounding with purpose. This was my chance to end her once and for all. I couldn't let her manipulate me, use her influence to destroy everything I held dear. No, this time I was the one in control. As I navigated the maze of back streets, I kept my eyes peeled for any sign of danger. I knew she had eyes everywhere, that her reach extended beyond what I could see. But I also knew her weakness, her hubris, her overconfidence. I would exploit that. I had learned her secrets, uncovered her darkest truths, and now I was ready to reveal everything. The plan was simple in theory. Reach the safe house, send the evidence to the right people, and ensure her downfall. In practice, it was a deadly game. Every step I took was a calculated risk. I dodged in and out of shadows, my senses heightened, my mind focused on the task. I refused to be caught, refused to be silenced. Suddenly I spotted a black SUV parked in the shadows, a signal that I was near my destination. I sprinted, weaving through alleyways and over fences, each stride bringing me closer. My hands trembled slightly, an amalgamation of exhaustion, fear, and fiery resolve. I knew what was at stake. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about justice, about stopping her from dragging more innocent lives into her twisted web. Reaching the safe house, I threw open the door, heart pounding as I pulled out my phone to send the files. As I watched the encrypted message go through, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. But I knew better than to feel safe. Her shadow still loomed, more dangerous than ever. I had escaped her trap, yes, but the war was far from over. I straightened, taking a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. I had outmaneuvered her for now, but I knew she wouldn't stay silent for long. The game had only just begun, and I intended to be the one to write the final chapter. My pulse quickened as I spotted the window of opportunity, that narrow slit between the chaos and my desperate hope. The police station's surveillance camera blared softly behind me, oblivious to my silent maneuver. I pulled out the small flash drive, clutching it tightly. My lifeline, my salvation. With trembling fingers, I connected it to the dusty terminal, bypassing the usual security protocols I had meticulously studied. Every second mattered. I knew Elena's eyes were on me, even from miles away, waiting for her chance to strike. The files transferred sluggishly, and I felt a bead of sweat trail down my brow despite the cold night air. This was my moment to end her reign of terror, to expose her for the monster she truly was. I'd spent so many nights planning this, risking everything for a fragment of justice. I was painfully aware that once I hit send, there was no turning back. The evidence, irrefutable and damning, would be in the hands of the authorities within moments. Yet, as the transfer completed, a sharp, icy dread crept up my spine. Suddenly the world shifted. The streetlights flickered, shadows stretching longer and darker than before. I felt it before I saw it, her presence lurking in the periphery. Elena's reach was longer than I'd thought. I froze. My mind raced for an escape, but the alley was a dead end, labyrinthine and choking with despair. I had just enough time to tuck the flash drive into my jacket pocket before footsteps echoed behind me, heavy and deliberate. I turned, heart pounding against my ribs, to face the nightmare I'd known was coming. Her killers emerged from the darkness like ghosts summoned by her wrath. Silent, lethal. They moved with an almost mechanical precision, their eyes cold and unfeeling. I didn't hesitate. I bolted, sprinting through the alley, my lungs heaving, adrenaline numbing the pain in my legs. I darted toward the fire escape, desperately seeking a higher ground, a sliver of hope in the chaos. The metallic stairs groaned beneath my weight as I ascended, each step a gamble. I could hear their shouts below, commands I couldn't decipher but understood in my gut. They were hunting me, and this time they wouldn't miss. From atop the rooftop, I cowered behind a vent pipe, clutching the small drive as if it were a talisman. My mind raced, weighing my options: run and risk capture, hide and hope Elena's wrath subsides, or fight my way out. I knew the police would be alerted soon, that the evidence would soon be in their hands. But Elena's reach extended farther than I could see. I had to stay hidden, stay alive until I could pass the final message. A faint glow of dawn threatened the horizon as I spotted a service drone hovering nearby. It was a risky move, but I remembered the old communication relay nearby, an unguarded access point I'd scoped out days ago. If I could hijack that drone and direct it to send the files directly to the authorities, I could buy precious time. Heart pounding, I made my move, waving my hands frantically to catch its attention. The drone drifted closer, sensors whirring softly, and I seized the moment, uploading the files onto its onboard system. The drone pulsed with a faint blue light as it processed my command. I watched, holding my breath, as it veered off into the morning sky. The offer of salvation flickered in my chest. If this worked, Elena's reign of terror would shatter. I knew she was already on her way, probably dispatching her mercenaries to hunt me down, to silence me forever. I could feel her vengeance closing in, a cold, relentless tide. Clinging to the edge of the roof, I spotted a faint glimmer of a distant police siren, a beacon of hope amid the chaos. I prepared to jump, to drop into the alley below and disappear into the maze of streets. I had done everything I could, risked everything to bring her down. Yet I knew this was only the beginning. Elena wouldn't rest until I was eradicated. Her cruelty knew no bounds, and her obsession with control was insatiable. As I leapt, I caught a fleeting glimpse of her shadow emerging from a side alley, her eyes blazing with fury, her lips curling into a cold, calculated smirk. I felt her hatred burn into me, knowing she'd pay me back in blood. But I had made my move. My message was sent. The evidence was out of her reach, at least for now. I landed hard on the pavement, pain blossoming through my bones, but I refused to stop. I sprinted into the labyrinth of streets, every breath a fight, every step a testament to my resolve. Elena's vengeance was coming, I was sure of it. I could feel her presence stalking behind me, relentless, unyielding. But I had thrown the first stone in her house of lies. This fight was far from over, and I intended to be the one to end it. The moment Elena's face finally appeared in front of me, I could feel the cold shift in the air, as if the very room had frozen in anticipation. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, bore into mine with the kind of intensity that left no room for doubt. She was here for blood, for domination, for the final assertion of her power. I clenched my fists, my palms sweaty despite the chill, as I took in her icy expression, so meticulously controlled, yet beneath it, I sensed the storm of fury waiting to be unleashed. She stepped closer, her heels clicking against the concrete floor, each movement deliberate and premeditated. Her lips curled into a smile that was more a threat than a gesture of civility. I knew that smile well, an expression of someone who would do anything to protect her empire, even if it meant killing the very person who had once been her closest confidant. The air around her seemed to hum with a deadly promise, and I felt the weight of everything I had done crashing down on me. "Elena," I managed to rasp, my voice hoarse from the tension that seemed to squeeze my throat tighter with each passing second. I wanted to scream at her, to expose her, but even as I opened my mouth, I knew it would be futile. She was always several steps ahead, her mind a labyrinth of secrets and lies. I had handed her over, yes, but every fiber of my being told me I had only begun to crack the surface of her true face. Her gaze flickered, a flicker of something colder now, perhaps amusement or disdain. "You thought you could outsmart me," she whispered, voice silky yet deadly. "You thought that by betraying me you could survive. But I'm the one who controls the game. And right now I decide your fate." Her hand moved, slow and deliberate, reaching into her coat for the silenced pistol she kept hidden. I saw it in her eyes, the hunger for control, the willingness to obliterate anything that threatened her world. I took a cautious step back, my mind racing for a way out, any way to turn the tide. But I knew deep down that I had already lost. I had handed her the perfect weapon, my own betrayal, my vulnerability. I remembered the countless nights I spent plotting, the sacrifices I made, just to see her empire crumble. Yet here she was, calm as ever, ready to end me in an instant. Her voice cut through the silence again, colder this time. "You thought the police would save you? That your little stunt would bring me down? No, you played into my hands. I knew you'd betray me just like everyone else." Her eyes gleamed with a sinister satisfaction. "And now I have to teach you a lesson." The gun's muzzle was steady, unwavering as she aimed it at my chest. I could feel my heart pounding in my ribcage, each beat echoing the dread that had been building inside me since the moment I decided to confront her. I clenched my jaw, determined not to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. Still, I could taste the bitter irony. Here I was, face to face with the woman I had once trusted most, now poised to end my life over the empire of blood she so fiercely protected. Suddenly, her expression shifted, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. "You think you're the hero," she murmured, voice almost gentle but deadly. "But you're just a pawn, and I decide when the game ends." In that instant, I realized her true face, not the seductive, manipulative woman I tried to love, but a cold, ruthless predator who would kill to safeguard her dominion. My mind flashed to the nights I had spent scheming, the sacrifices I had made to bring her down, and the horrible realization that I had underestimated her. She was willing to burn everything, her empire, her soul, her humanity, to cling to her control. And I was just another piece on her chessboard, a casualty in her relentless pursuit of power. As she finally squeezed the trigger, the deafening bang shattered my reality. I saw the flash of the muzzle, felt the force of the bullet ripping through the air, and everything else became a blur. fire, pain. The echo of my own scream drowned in the chaos. Somehow I managed to stagger back, my vision swimming, the room spinning around me. I knew I was bleeding, but the pain was a distant echo compared to the crushing weight of betrayal and loss. In that moment, I realized Elena's true face, a woman no longer bound by morality or mercy, only a hunger for absolute control. Her thirst for power had transformed her into something unrecognizable, a monster cloaked beneath her cold veneer. I had given her my trust, my loyalty, and in return, she had paid me back with a venomous bite. Now, lying on the cold floor, I fought to stay conscious, knowing that this confrontation was only a chapter in an even darker story. Elena's empire was built on blood, and her thirst for dominance knew no bounds. I had played my part in her game, but I vowed somehow, someway, I would find a way to end her reign of terror, because I knew with every fiber of my being that this was just the beginning of our final, deadly dance. As I sit in this cold, unforgiving cell, the weight of everything crashes down on me with a brutality I never imagined I would endure. The iron bars seem to mock my helplessness, each clang echoing like a reminder of the chaos I helped unleash. Eleanor is behind those walls now, in her own prison of greed and treachery, yet I know her mind is still sharp, plotting, waiting, just like she always did. I remember the day I handed her over. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the hollow ache of betrayal. I had sacrificed everything, my freedom, my dignity, even my soul, to bring her down. The plan was simple in theory: expose her, dismantle her empire from the inside out. But nothing prepared me for the cost. As I watched her get cuffed, her smile remained steady, a serpent's grin that told me she'd already won. It was as if she knew all along that this was just a game to her, a game I had played into blindly. Yet, despite her downfall, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had lost more than I gained. My life, the quiet moments, the future I envisioned, was shattered beyond repair. Helena paid a hitman to end me while I was behind bars, and I could feel her cold, calculating hand in everything. That betrayal cut deeper than the bullet that nearly took my life. I had given her trust, and she repaid me with poison. The memory of her face, her cold, ruthless eyes, haunts me more than the pain in my body. Inside these prison walls, I dwell on the irony of it all. I thought revenge would set me free, but it only chained me tighter, binding me to the darkness I fought so hard to escape. Every day feels like a slow erosion of my hope, a relentless reminder that I am nothing more than a pawn in her twisted game. I wonder if she feels the same emptiness, if her victory tastes as bitter as mine does. Sometimes I sit in the shadows of my cell and contemplate redemption. Is it even possible after everything? Can a soul so tarnished find peace amid the wreckage of betrayal? I trace the scars on my hands, each one a testament to the battles fought, both external and internal. Perhaps somewhere deep inside, a flicker of something else remains, an ember of hope, a whisper of the person I once was before Elena's darkness consumed me. I think about the choices I made, the lines I crossed, and realize that vengeance demanded everything from me. It stole my future, my peace, my sense of self. And yet in this suffocating darkness, I cling to the belief that redemption isn't lost forever. That maybe, just maybe, this black hole I'm in can be a starting point, not an end. Elena, with her cold, calculating mind, believed she could control everything, her empire, her fate, even death itself. But she underestimated the toll of her treachery. I have no illusions that she feels remorse. Her soul is too far gone. Still, I wonder if she sees me now, stripped of everything, a broken shell of what I used to be, and if somewhere underneath all that malice, she regrets what she's done. I tell myself I will find a way out of this nightmare, not necessarily for revenge, but for something more elusive, peace, a reconciliation of my fractured spirit, even if the world around me remains dark and unforgiving. I have been broken, yes, but maybe, just maybe, I can rebuild what's left of myself piece by piece. This darkness has devoured much, yet I refuse to let it consume me entirely. I stare at the faint outline of the prison ceiling, feeling the faint flicker of defiance stirring within. Helena's empire crumbled, her plans thwarted, but my fight isn't over. Somewhere beneath the rubble of my life, I sense a faint glimmer of redemption, an uncertain, fragile hope that I can find my way back from the abyss. As I close my eyes, I silently vow that this is not the end, that even in the depths of betrayal and loss, I can forge a new path, one that leads away from darkness toward whatever light remains. Because no matter how much I have lost, I still have my will to survive, my desire to see dawn after the night, and I swear I will find my redemption, no matter what it costs.